What's happening, everyone? Welcome to the Festive Fitness Guide. So I'm very excited to talk to you about this today because having spoke to a lot of people at this time of year, I completely understand that it can be quite a conflicting time because on one hand you want to enjoy all the fun and festivities that happen at this time of year, but on the other hand you don't necessarily want to completely ruin all the progress you made over the last year. You don't want to completely cut loose. You do want to enjoy yourself, but you want to be a little bit conscious of your health and fitness goals. So it creates a bit of a uncomfortable feeling where you don't really know what to do. So I want to help you decide your own approach this year. Now, if you've got any kind of social media, I'm sure you've been absolutely inundated with people's opinions on what you should be doing at the time of year. It seems to be very conflicting, and I guess here's my 2 cents. But no, I'm going to do it a little bit differently, because I just want to give you some tools to be able to go, what do I want out this time of year? And then how can I actually execute that? So what is the point of this webinar here? So the first thing is to build some intention. I really don't think it's up to anyone else to tell you how you should act, how you should prioritize your health and fitness goals compared to your social stuff. I think the crux of it is just getting you to the point where you're comfortable with your choices, and I believe that's where intention comes in. I also believe that we can definitely find a balance. I don't think you have to completely abandon all your health and fitness goals at this time of year, but you can still have fun, because we don't want you to get to the point where you go back to work in January and be like, bloody hell, what has happened here? So we want to strike a bit of a balance there. So like I said, all of this is going to culminate in you having your own approach by getting clear on your values and what you want out of it, and I will help you follow through with that. So we will also have a fun little worksheet. I know it's everyone's favourite. So in the comments, I'm going to drop a little sheet that I've made, and I want this to be quite interactive as interactive as something that you're just watching me talk can be. So I will tell you whenever we've got one of the tasks, whenever we're at the relevant bit of a worksheet, and I would encourage you to pause and actually think about applying the thing that we go through so that you get something out of it rather than just watching it. You might go, oh, that's cool. Well, hopefully you go cool and not say, oh, that was boring. Hopefully there's something that you can take out of it and then you can carry forward with you. As I touched on at the start, I am big on balance. I think that it often gets neglected, the actual value of socialising and eating tasty food just for the sake of it. Now, when we talk about health, people typically go straight for what we call the physical health. Just to take a step back, health actually has a number of domains. It isn't just that physical element, even though that's what we tend to think of. So there's reportedly 6 domains of health, and like I said, the physical is just one of those. We've also got our mental health, our environmental health, our economic health, emotional health. And Christmas is a really great time of year where we can work on some of these other elements of health. Now, we can obviously lean into that social side of things. I am just so big on the fact that being healthy should include some fun things. I think there's no point having like a six-pack or the body of your dreams if you're really not happy, you've got no mates and you've got no money. Our health is limited by the lowest one of these. Like, we're only as strong as the weakest link. I know that's a bit cliche, but if any of these are completely written off, that's not healthy. And of course it is relative to your goals and your expectations. So one person's minimum standard for physical health might be down here, another might be up there. I just have to check that we can squeeze that all into the camera. But yeah, so I really think that it is important to recognise the actual value in going out with your mates, meeting up with people, seeing your family, rather than seeing it as like a negative. That being said, of course we can take it too far if we completely focus on the social health and we just eat and drink everything under the sun. Of course that will start to diminish the physical health side of things. So we do need to consider both, but I just think that the social and emotional side of things kind of gets brushed over and we just focus on that physical. So going forward, I'd like to introduce something called the festive season spectrum. So at one end of the spectrum, we've got the whole people that train Christmas morning, go for a run, tag themselves at the 24-hour gym. They're bringing their Tupperware to the family dinner. If their nan offers them tiramisu, they're chucking it back at her. And then at the other end of the spectrum, we've got people who just see Christmas as a 3-week piss-up. That is speaking from first-hand experience. You might have heard that whole, calories don't count at Christmas, memories over calories, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I very much see them as the ends of the spectrum, and I feel like most of you watching today are probably somewhere in the middle. So I want to help you kind of work out where you are within this spectrum. And that conveniently leads us into our first little task. So if you grab that worksheet that I've put in the comments, the first question is, imagine going back to work in January. You walk back into the office after your break. Think about what would happen to leave you feeling these kind of emotions. So think about if you were to feel really regretful, like you've overdone it the whole time. Spend a bit of time thinking about what that would look like. What would have to happen for you to feel that kind of stuff? And similarly, or conversely, what would happen for you to feel like you over-restricted, like you didn't really actually enjoy that social element, you didn't get what you wanted out of it from a social and fun perspective? So I'd like you to think about those two opposite areas. So if you need to pause it, well, not if you need to, I encourage you to pause it so you can actually think about those kind of things and visualize what that would look like. So pause it now. Did you pause it? Probably not, did you? So why is December a struggle? What is the point of this whole thing, really? Now, a stat that I've actually learned fairly recently is that obviously December and January are 6 of the year, quick maths, but they are responsible for around about 40% of their average annual weight gain. And what typically happens is people's weight kind of stays fairly stable, but there's just 1 or 2 times a year where it might just bump up a little bit, like half a kilo or a kilo. And obviously, and we can see that December and January are that time of year that is most responsible for weight gain. So they're very much overrepresented. So clearly there's something going on there. So I just want to really unpack what this could be and what I believe it is. So the first thing is the all or nothing mindset, or is also a cycle. So to run you through this, it's where you go all in on your goals. So you might join a gym, you might start running, blah, blah, blah. And then eventually you go, this is getting a bit tedious, it's a bit boring, I'm finding it a bit too much. So then you give up. Or have this big overindulgence. And then what happens then? You feel guilty, you beat yourself up, negative self-talk. So then you go all in again. And this cycle just goes on and on and on. Similarly, we can represent it like a pendulum. So you're going all in that way, you're signing up to your gym, going every day, smashing your workouts, cooking everything from scratch, loads of healthy meals, cutting out all sugar. But then it gets too much, so you swing the other way. So then you donate to a gym that you're never going to go to. You start just smashing at Uber Eats. You don't even look at a vegetable. And this is really fueled by perfectionism. So it's where we think that we need to be perfect to make progress. Like we've got really, really high standards. And if we can't be perfect, there's no point bothering at all. So if you catch yourself saying any of these kind of things, you've probably got an all or nothing mindset. Things like, I've already had one, so I may as well finish the box. There's no point starting now, I may as well just start in January. New year, new me. I've already eaten that, I may as well eat that. All those kind of phrases are classic all or nothing sort of catchphrases, if you will. Yeah, but the trouble with all of this is that whenever anything goes off plan or not quite perfect, you react by giving up entirely. So we kind of go through these phases of smashing it and then giving up completely, and it's just not conducive for long-term success. The next thing that I think causes us to struggle at this time of year is our environment. Now, often we talk about willpower being to blame for all these things, but I am massive on that. I think it's the environment you're in. And to explain my point, think about this maybe thought experiment. If you have a slice of cake on a side that you're constantly walking past, so it might be on on your kitchen or a table at work. If you walk past it enough times, eventually you're going to break and eat it, aren't you? Even if you weren't necessarily thinking about a cake, at some point you're going to eat it. So as a bit of an example for this, the other day we went for a barbecue and we had some crisps and didn't eat a whole pack. It was a big family pack thing. And I came home, left them on the side next to the kettle. And then first thing in the morning, I'd make myself a cup of tea. Of course I did, I'm English. And I found myself just grazing on the crisps at like 7 in the morning. Like, I didn't want crisps. I had no craving for them. It wasn't something that was on my mind. It was just purely because they were on the side, and then I just started grabbing them subconsciously. So I think our environment is far more responsible for our choices than willpower and discipline and all that jazz, as much as all the David Goggins fanboys would have you believe otherwise. And unfortunately, at this time of year, we do have indulgences absolutely everywhere. People are probably buying you chocolate as gifts. You're having like buffets at work. You're having your Christmas parties. People are sharing like boxes of celebrations, things like that. Similarly, alcohol. There's going to be a lot more social events. You might want to catch up with your mates that you haven't seen for a while. Nothing wrong with that, but you are in an environment that is quite hard to. Well, it's quite hard for it to be conducive to your health and fitness goals, and especially with alcohol, because it's not necessarily just the sort of like calorie cost. It's the fact that then you make rash decisions, you lose your motivation, things like that. So there's a lot of things fighting against you, and even beyond that, that's more the kind of emotional side of it. So Christmas can be really stressful. If you've got kids, sorting out all the last minute gifts. Obviously, I'm well prepared for my girlfriend. Like, there's no doubt about that. We've got time management issues. You're probably being pulled all over the place doing certain things, seeing people. If it is that last minute Christmas shopping, time can be a bit of a barrier. And then just fatigue. Like, you've had a long year. You might have been getting smashed to hit those last minute deadlines to get everything done before Christmas. You might be absolutely fed up with your boss. And there's so much evidence that when you're tired, when you're stressed, emotional eating starts happening. You use food as a bit of a crutch and you make much more rash decisions. So all of these things really do stack the odds against you. And like I said, I believe this goes far past reliance on like willpower and discipline and things like that. And then the final thing that I wanted to touch on was that at this time of year, typically structure goes out the window. So obviously when you're in your normal working week, you kind of start to refine a bit of a system around that. You get used to a bit of a routine and you sort of know what you're doing on which days, when you might cook, when you might need to order things in, when you do your food shop, all that kind of stuff. Whereas at this time of year, it can just be a bit chaotic, let alone that week between Christmas and New Year where you don't even know what day it is. So where you're not like in your usual 9 to 5 routine or whatever hours you work, you're probably not planning your meals. You might not prepare them in advance. You know how you might normally take your lunch to work. Things like that are just going to go out the window at this time of year. And then when we've not planned, it typically results in very impulsive and reactive choices. And this typically is when we go for our more convenient food. So whatever is most readily available, often we're going to go for that. So just to round that all out, I've got another little task for you. So make sure you do the pause. So I want you to think about the 3 biggest issues that could derail your fitness goals over Christmas. So think about the situations that might come up. Think about, any commitments that you have over this time, and maybe even reflect on last year or previous years when things might have gone a bit wrong. And I just want you to list those situations, because once we're aware of them, we can keep an eye out for them, and maybe even if you, as the next step, start to think about what would I do if this situation does come up? What would be a choice that kind of manages that situation as best as possible? So pause that, write down your 3 barriers, and I'll see you in the next slide. Did you pause it? So what can we actually do about it? I have come up with something called the 4 anchors of a balanced Christmas. Very hard not to say that with a W. So we've got intentionality, structure, environment, and lowering the bar. Obviously we've seen a couple of these before, but this is where we start to come up with an actual solution. And don't get too excited, but there's going to be more tasks for you. So intentionality, for me, that is just essentially getting you to the point where you're not going to regret your choices. You're acting with purpose, with intention, hence intentionality. And yeah, you've put a bit of thought into your values, your priorities at that time, and then you're making a bit of a plan that, supports that. So essentially what we're doing is putting a bit of thought into situations before they arise so that we kind of have a bit of a game plan for them, rather than it being very, very reactive. So I feel like reactive, so I've gone on to the father. Oh, what are we doing? I feel like reactive decisions are much less likely to align with our goals. And I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here, but obviously this isn't going to happen all the time. But as much as possible, if we can act in alignment with our values, then we're going to end up in a good place. And often there is a bit of a trade-off between like the fun, flavour, enjoyment side of things and the physical health. So we need to get comfortable with that trade-off, and being intentional about our choices helps us do that. At times, this might be going with the more indulgent thing. If you want to go out for 10 pints with your mates, that's absolutely fine. It's just doing it from a place of intention and purpose rather than getting too carried away. And similarly with getting a takeaway, things like that. If you are comfortable with that trade-off, absolutely crack on. Don't let anyone tell you not to. It's just you being comfortable with your decision so that you're not getting to January full of regret. And on a bit more of a specific level, we also want to be intentional about our indulgences. So we want them to be enjoyable. We want to eat for enjoyment as opposed to it being hunger, with the kind of foods that are going to be very calorie dense, highly processed, all that kind of jazz. So your chocolate, your crisps, ice cream, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. So we want them to come from a place of I'm eating that to enjoy it as opposed to I'm just really hungry and I want something. One way that I do this is through something called snack pairing. So this is where you take your indulgence, you take your chocolate, and then you pair it with something that will create a bit more balance around that. So the classic example is your chocolate with some Greek yogurt and a bit of fruit, so maybe some banana or blueberries, things like that. And what this does, it means that it's going to fill you up, but you're also, yes, you're eating a few more calories from the yogurt and the fruit, but you're then far less likely to go and then smash the whole packet. So I've used this really effectively with a client recently who was so bad for, and I've done this myself, who am I kidding? Rather than just getting a line of chocolate, going back for 2 lines, 3 lines, and then smashing the whole block. So what we did was this yogurt example. So we made sure that he'd have some yogurt and some fruit, and then he'd sprinkle his chocolate on top. And I think he said he's lost about 9 kilos in the last 3 or 4 months. And this was the thing that he most attributed it to. So snack pairing is really, really effective. Pre-eating can also be one. So if you know you're going out for dinner, rather than trying to save yourself for the meal, just have a small little snack just to take the edge off your hunger, so that when you get there, you're just choosing what you want and you can eat a bit more mindfully than turning up absolutely ravenous. And again, yes, you are eating a few more calories, but restaurant food is so calorie dense. There's so much oil, butter, cream, things like that. It's made for taste and to make you eat as much as possible. Well, not eat as much as possible, but it's made for you to have a positive taste experience as opposed to what is going to be most beneficial for your fitness goals. So yeah, just to summarise, the overall goal of intentionality is to reduce regret rather than having specific rules. So your little task here is to narrow down to your next social event. So let's get intentional about your next social occasion. So number 1, we go, what is the event and what do you want out of it? So, if it's Christmas Day, obviously you want to enjoy your meal, you want to spend some time with your family, all that kind of stuff. And then with that, we would then go on to what would over-restriction look like and what would over-indulgence look like. Now, I know Christmas might not necessarily be a great example because we're probably going to be a bit more, see what comes up. So maybe just think about it in terms of a work party or just a night out with your mates, things like that. And then the final step is what would balance look like. And from there, we've got our ends of the spectrum again, and then we're finding a middle of the road approach so that we don't feel like we missed out, but we're still not completely sacking off the health and fitness goals. So pause that, go through that, or just use it whenever you do have a social event coming up. I do this with my clients all the time, and it's so effective, so that they don't feel like they missed out really, but they're also very, very conscious of the stuff that we're working on together. The next anchor is your environment. So obviously we've touched on how it can be a bit of a problem. I want to help you use it for you. I want to help you use it to achieve your goals rather than working against it, so that we're working smarter, not harder, and we're not relying on willpower. I've got something called the golden zone. So these are the areas that when you first go for food, that your eyes focus on. So it's kind of that eye level in the fridge or in your pantry. It might be that drawer that you go to, but there's certain things that our eyes are naturally drawn towards, and I can't remember the statistic, but you are far more likely to eat one of the first 2 or 3 things that you see whenever you open something up. Again, it's kind of just putting it subconsciously into your brain. So even if you look at it, then look around, you're far more likely to eat one of the first couple of things you've seen. So I would be very, very conscious at this time of year about what you've got on display. So that can include like your kitchen sides, and then what you've got in those areas that you go for food. So the less we need to use that willpower, the better. And we can absolutely put things in certain places to facilitate that. So what we're doing here is adding or removing friction. So we're taking the things that we want more of and trying to reduce the friction. So that could mean if we want to eat more vegetables, for example, we might chop them up and put them in a Tupperware at eye level, as opposed to them being like a solid carrot in the bottom drawer of the fridge. Obviously, you're more likely to eat the carrot sticks compared to your manky old carrot at the bottom. And conversely, if you were trying to eat less, I don't know, say chocolate yogurts, rather than them being at that eye level, put them out of the way, put them at the back, put them behind stuff, so that you have to actually think about it and want it, as opposed to it just being the thing that comes out and slaps you when you open that fridge. Got another little task here. So what I'd like you to do is identify the first 3 areas that you look for snacks, what are your go-tos when you're hungry, and then for each of them, list 1 or 2 options that could align more with your goals. And then finally, think of some things that we can do to add friction to those foods you want less of. Now, some great examples of this have been, putting things out in the garage, putting them to the back, keeping them in like the packet or wrapping them in foil or something like that, so that they're not really, really visible. But go through that, have a little think about your food environment. The next anchor we've got is structure. Now, as we mentioned before, structure does tend to go out the window a little bit at this time of year. But I want to bring a little bit of consistency to the chaos. So clearly there's going to be a lot more off-the-cuff stuff, but can we separate the things that are just coming up from the things that we can have a bit more control over? Can we create a bit of a distinction between those and focus on nailing the things that aren't those social meals? Because even if you go out, 5 or 6 times, if you're eating 3 times a day, that still leaves a hell of a lot of things that are within your control. So just planning what you can. I'm really big on, so one of the first things I do with new clients is help them start creating their own meal plans, or going through a weekly planning process. And the idea isn't that you need to eat every single thing that you plan. It's just so that you're set up so that you've got that potential, and that even if some things are off plan, an awful lot of your choices can be planned. So from that, we can kind of identify our non-negotiables. These are like our absolute bare minimums, the things that almost no matter what, we can still do. So it might be getting out for a daily walk, it might be eating your fruit and veg, all sorts of things like that. And then one thing that I think is really effective at this time of year is using breakfast as a bit of an anchor. I don't know why I've got a real anchor theme today, and but breakfast has a number of uses on quite a few different levels. So from a physical level, if we can have a well-balanced breakfast, so with some fibre, with some protein, with some fat, so that it's going to take a while to digest. We're going to manage our hunger, all that kind of stuff. And then it's reducing the likelihood that we're just going to graze all morning. So from that sort of structural perspective, again, I'm speaking to myself here, it's so easy to start the day with limp balls, have a few leftovers, have a bit of dessert, and your morning is then just filled with all these little picking at things. But if we can create a bit of consistency or a slightly regular eating pattern through breakfast, that is just going to set you up for a much more health-seeking day. And that kind of leads us on to the last point around it, is that beyond the physical side of that breakfast, right, I just want to step back. So I don't really care what time of day you have this. If you're only hungry at 8 o'clock, have it at 8 o'clock. If you're only hungry at 9 o'clock, have it at 9 o'clock. If you're an early riser, have it earlier. It doesn't really matter to me. It's just that first meal of the day is something that actually fills you up for not a crazy amount of calories when we compare it to if you just had a bit of chocolate and some leftover tiramisu or whatever. But yeah, the last point I wanted to make around it is the psychological benefit of just doing something early in the day that feels like a win. You've probably heard about like the lemon water craze and the apple cider vinegar craze first thing in the morning. Now they've got absolute benefit from a physical health perspective, but people often get really good results from them. And so much of that is from the psychological element of creating some momentum from getting an early win. So at this time of year, if we can really use that to our advantage by nailing a solid breakfast, so then we're telling ourselves this is a day that is going to have some focus on my physical health amongst all the other elements of fun and socialising, all that kind of jazz. And then the next one I wanted to touch on was lowering the bar. So obviously this was me flat out on the limbo, dreaming. So what I want to do here is encourage you to drop your standards. Not got any experience of that, but we're shrinking our normal habits. So say you're someone who goes to the gym 5 times a week, could we just train twice a week over Christmas? If you're someone who goes out for an hour, run every couple of days, could we just do a 20-minute? We just want to shrink these things so that they're much more accessible, because one of the biggest barriers to actually doing positive habits when you're busy is just feeling overwhelmed by them, feeling like they're unattainable. So if we can just shrink them to the absolute bare minimum, embrace this good enough. I'm so big on this, like good enough done consistently will absolutely outperform smashing it and then doing nothing. So if we can just make it a solid increment as opposed to just this big extremes. Good sign language, that one. And just a bit of a take-home quote for you. Always something is always going to be all or nothing. So let's get away from that whole, if I can't do this, I won't bother at all. So your task here is kind of joining structure and lowering the bar. So I want you to identify 3 easy habits that could become your minimum standards over the Christmas break. This can be on like a day-to-day basis. So it might be eating your fruit and veg, getting a couple of serves of fruit and veg a day. It could be nailing protein at breakfast. Anything, I don't really mind getting a daily walk, just going outside once a day. Whatever just feels very doable for you, but counts as a bit of a win. Or it can be a bit more on like a weekly basis. So again, that example, if you're someone who trains 5 times a week, maybe just say, can I train twice a week? Twice over these couple of weeks. So yeah, go through that task, set your minimum standards, and I'll see you in the next slide. So just to summarise, our anchors of a balanced Christmas are the more intentional we can be, the less guilt we'll have. The more structure we have, the less impulsive decisions we'll make. The more we can manage our environment, the less we'll have to rely on willpower. And lowering the bar will help you maintain momentum. So hopefully that's a bit of a summary overview of what we've got there. But essentially we're just trying to retain some momentum instead of like burying our head in the sand and then feeling a load of pressure and stress and anxiety when it comes to January. Unfortunately, no matter what plan we do here, there's going to be times where we trip up. We're all imperfect. We all have times where we get a bit carried away on the beers, where we eat too much, where one missed gym session turned into 5-6 days without going, all that kind of stuff. There's always going to be things that trip us up. Even the best plans crumble. But the key is in how you react. even with like a big night out or a big weekend where you absolutely get on it the whole weekend, it's not typically that event that stops people reaching their goals. It's how they react afterwards. So does it spiral? Does it go into this all or nothing mindset? Or can they just call it there and get back to their normal routine as soon as possible? So we don't want to, and this is a bit of a nuance here, we don't want to compensate. There's a bit of a distinction between saying, oh, I was bad last night, so I'm not eating today, versus last night I did a lot of things for my social health. So say you did have a night out, that was really good for my social health. Now I'm going to do a lot of things for my physical health. Your language around this is so important, because that sort of punishment creates a really bad relationship with exercise and absolutely fuels that all or nothing cycle that I keep going on about. So we don't want to compensate, because that does just go from that pendulum swinging constantly. So we just want to draw a line in the sand, and whatever rules we've made, be quite flexible on them. As much as I've tried to foolproof it all, I guess, we just want to be, we don't want to be rigid around this and fall apart if we can't ever do anything. So any single rule we make, we want some flexibility around that, and not to get too caught up on it and put too much of an emotional attachment to it. And then the final thing is having a bit of self-compassion. When I first heard about self-compassion, I kind of thought it was airy-fairy, just making excuses. And I guess it is making excuses, but without the negative connotations of that, because self-compassion is unpacking what happened. We're stating what happened, what was the thing, the issue, I guess. Why did it happen? What was the reason behind it? What was the situation? And the key thing with self-compassion, the key third bit, is what would I do differently next time? And this turns it into a really, really effective exercise, because we're breaking down the thing, but then going, oh, firstly, am I comfortable with that decision? Because you might go, oh, I wouldn't do anything differently next time. And if not, sweet, move on. But if you would, at least you've learned from it, so that every sort of slip up, I'm not really a big fan of that term, but it's what kind of people use, becomes a learning experience that we can build on. So self-compassion is actually really, really useful. And it's something that I've changed my mind on over the last couple of years. That kind of wraps it all up, to be honest with you. So if you have watched all of that and gone, yeah, it makes sense, but I don't really know how to apply that to my situation, I don't really get it, then I would love to have a little chat with you. Flash, eh? So I'd love to have a one-on-one, if you would like to, I'd love to have a one-on-one call with you to help you apply these principles, so that you can start January with a bit of momentum and have a bit of a plan. I'm sure I'll honour this till January if you are someone that wanted to hold off. So normally these calls are $120, but if you've watched this webinar, you come from here, then I'll knock it down to $80. So you can contact me. My email is sean@peaknutritioncoaching.com. My Instagram is that, I believe. But if you just start searching that, I'm sure it will come up. So reach out to me there. Say you watch the webinar and you want a little bit of help, and then we'll get that locked in, and I will help you go through all the sort of nuances around this. And I always, after the call, I will create a report and give you a personalised plan so that you've got confidence going forwards. So thank you so much for watching. I guess the one thing that I want to leave you with is there's no right or wrong approach at Christmas. It is all just trying to live in alignment with your values. There is so much value in this time of year from a social health perspective, for our emotional health. And yes, that may have a little bit of a trade-off from a physical health perspective, but that is okay. Yeah, I really hope you can find some balance over this festive period. And thank you for watching, and I'll speak to you soon.